Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at B2B World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to the current political situation in the country and in the ways in which we have seen things develop in the aftermath of the protest and rally of PTI in Islamabad. And this is something that has pointed to larger concerns with reference to the party's political involvement and the role that it has played in Pakistan and the kind of impact that that creates on the country. And then, of course, with reference to the party's own disagreements between different leadership that seems to be emerging as well, with an audio leak also surfacing with the PTI leader talking about how the founders' orders were in fact not followed, and the sit-in was taken to T-Chalk, which was not according to the wishes of the founder of the party. And this is something that has also been pointed out along with the presence and involvement of Bushra Bibi and other leaders as part of their decision-making on the protests and rallies and what needs to be done about that. There seems to be a lot of questioning as to what really was the sentiment that was coming in from the jail and what it is that was being followed on the streets. At the same time, of course, we've also seen that there might have been some deliberation going on with reference to what needs to be the step ahead for this political party, including, of course, talks about banning the political party or a governor rule in KP. And this is something that has been mentioned both by the vice president of the party with reference to what has been going on and with reference to what needs to be the possible scenario in the future. He's talked about national reconciliation and has requested a meeting with the party's founder as well for more talks on that, and has also supported what needs to be the move forward in terms of reconciliation and dialogue. Whether or not, of course, that's a possibility or is the case is something that remains to be seen. At the moment, however, we do not have reports of exactly what the government intends to do and what will be the future step forward, but we do know that the anti-terrorism court has issued non-bailable arrest warrants for the PTI founder, Bushra Bibi, and CMKP as well. And so we need to make sure what it is going to be as we move forward in terms of the law and order situation, in terms of the approach taken by both the government and the PTI and what that means for the political future of the country. That will be the focus of our first segment in the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at the developing situation in Palestine and the ongoing genocide in Gaza, and something, of course, for which we've spoken about a possibility of ceasefire or any move forward or a better approach. This is something, of course, that remains to be seen whether it happens or not, but it seems that some sort of efforts have re-emerged in Egypt, where Cairo has hosted talks and Hamas is also present with reference to any possible future scenario. And the U.S. Spokesperson has also mentioned that there is a way forward and possibility of truce, but that it is not something that we're there yet, and of course needs to be figured out. What that means in terms of on-ground situation for the people of Palestine and their suffering, of course, remains to be seen, but that's a question that we'll try and figure out in the second segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Patafi and Rajat Faisal. We've also been joined online by Dr. Niaz, murtaza, senior analyst, and barrister safi, ghauri, as the political analyst and legal expert. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the show today and for joining us in the debate. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Niaz, with reference to what we have seen in terms of the PTI's protest rally and the sit-in as well. What seems now to be emerging is a rift in terms of the decision-making, or what were the original orders of the leadership and what were followed. And of course, we've also been seeing an audio leak emerging for that as well, and yet another one with reference to this party. And I want your take on what exactly does that really point towards in terms of where the PTI's political leadership really does stand. We have the founder and the vice chairman in jail. We have, of course, we saw the CMKP and we saw Bushra Bibi taking the lead with reference to the protest rally, and now, of course, different aspects of that seem to be emerging as well. What does that tell you about where does the party's leadership stand? Do you think that there are definite cracks in the party, or do you think that the leadership is strong?
Well, obviously, given what the party has gone through over the last 2 years in terms of, losing probably 75-80% of its old senior leadership, it's not a big surprise if there are, a lot of cracks. I would say cracks are small, a small reference to what exists within the party. It's more like ruptures or something bigger. And obviously, everybody's pulling the party in different directions with their own agendas. But then, what is also true is that, the party has been able to, maintain its popularity. It hasn't, completely withered away. and it still enjoys, a strong political support within the people, even if the people are not willing to take the risk of coming out. So whatever is happening within the party is, one thing, but what are the implications of that for Pakistan is the bigger issue. And the takeaway that I have come away from November 26th is the unfortunate fact that the country is still not able to find political stability based on genuine political consensus and political legitimacy. The two sides are still poles apart on even trying to start negotiations towards reaching some sort of a consensus. And every time something is tried by different sides, ultimately it ends up into something like November 26, which means more political instability, it means more economic instability, it creates more chaos, more, inability to attract investment, more bad coverage for Pakistan internationally. So this is, the kind of angle that we need to look at. And I think, the government has a bigger responsibility given that it has more at stakes, it has more powers. We have to find a way to, genuinely solve this, standoff between the two parties. And there are plenty of, grievances on both sides which have to be addressed. So the sooner, we can create a pathway towards where both sides can start talking to each other instead of shouting at each other, instead of attacking each other, I think the sooner it will be better for Pakistan.
Right, absolutely. And Barrister Safi, I want your take on two aspects that seem to be circulating. Of course, it remains to be seen whether or not that is actually something that the government is going to move towards or is deliberating upon. But reports, of course, have pointed towards deliberations with regards to banning the party. We've seen that before as well. Previously, many times this question has been raised, and governance rule in KP. And I want your take on both of them in terms of the current scenario and in terms of what the party has acted both now and previously as well, whether or not that is a decision that helps in any way the political scenario of the country.
Thank you very much, Sana. Sana, I am of the opinion that a party should not be banned. It does not really lead to anything. If at all, it just increases their popularity. PTI, for all intents and purposes, has now proven to be a lame duck. I mean, we have seen. Let's just look at these. Let's look at this final do or die call. This was their leader's last call. It was very obvious, and he put in all the effort. People came out and riled everyone up, said that they're going to give sacrifices of their own lives. Despite all the rhetoric that we heard, the official numbers are ranging anywhere between 10 to 30,000. That's nothing. That is absolutely nothing for the state to attend to. A 10 to 15, 10 to 30,000. We know that the majority of the leadership did not show up. We know that nobody from Punjab showed up. It was only some people from the KPK. Now, increased intelligence reports are showing that a lot of the people who came from KPK were Afghans who were fearing that they would be kicked out of the country. They have their problems. There's also been a recent crackdown against smugglers. So there are videos emerging of how smugglers have paid off their big gangs to try and support it. Regardless of whatever it is, it's very clear that this is a crumbling party. And their own actions on 26th November show that it's crumbling. There is no centralized leadership. If the leadership is saying that you need to go and protest at Sanjani, somebody else is saying, no, we'll go to Srinagar Highway. Another person is saying, no, we'll go to D Chowk. It clearly shows that the party is in no order of doing anything. The party leadership is afraid. They're not coming forward. And increasingly, we're seeing that the party is self-cannibalizing. It's I am on some groups, and what we're seeing now is that the PTI workers are sending texts saying that instead of attacking other parties, we need to go and attack our own leaders first. Some of these leaders are actually my friends, so I'm very worried about it. But the idea now is that the PTI leadership is actively hiding from their own workers. So if the government was to try and intervene and try and ban the party or impose governor rule, that would just be shooting themselves in the foot at a time when the party is on its way out, destroying itself actively, not able to regroup, not able to do anything. I really don't see the point of why the government would do that, how that would help. And I honestly hope that better sense would prevail, because historically we have seen that banning a party has never worked. Never. Like, if we even look at the parties that are banned, that were banned in the past, People's Party was banned. People's Party was declared a proscribed organization. Look at where People's Party is now. MQM was banned. Look at where MQM is now. Yeah, a lot of these political parties, almost every political party has gone through some ban and has come out victorious. So I honestly, genuinely believe that the government would be very stupid if it were to try and ban them. And imposing governor rule is an even worse idea, because KPK, as it stands right now, is unfortunately, this I say with a lot of sadness. KPK is on the verge of collapse. It is on the verge of collapse because of mismanagement. The entire government has been utilized to go and protest against Islamabad. They've not been managing themselves. The civil servants in KPK have not been paid for many, many months now. They have outstanding bills. Contractors have not been paid. I mean, if one was to just look at what the performance of the KP government is, the KPK is now lagging behind all the other provinces of Pakistan. And in 10 years, the HDI, the Human Development Index of KPK has gone down. So if the government was to take over a province that is on the verge of collapse, things will only get worse there. There's no way they will suddenly have to take over a province, suddenly have to pay a lot of people that they had to pay off. They do not have the money to pay those people off. They will not be able to pull it off. And then all the blame would fall on the governors rather than on the CMKPK, who is currently responsible. So in my opinion, the government should just let things move organically instead of trying to make any blunders, make any extra moves. Let the matters be dealt with in the courts. And I'll add one more thing here. I was just hearing Dr. Saab talk about how the matter should be resolved. With all respect, Dr. Saab, obviously, all things need to be resolved. But how do you resolve it with a party which does not have any fixed leadership, which does not seem to obey anything? In this particular case, in this particular protest, the Islamabad High Court, after having given bail to Bushra Bibi, clearly stated that we are giving you this bail conditionally and you're not to go forward and you're not to create any further messes, you're not to violate any court orders, and if you violate any court orders, then you will be brought back to the court. And on these grounds, the bail was given, and she took an oath before the court that she will. Now, the moment she got out, she started organizing this, and then we know what happened. The Islamabad High Court forbade them from marching into Islamabad. Yet, despite court orders, despite there being a law, despite there being Section 144, despite using every legal means possible, they still violated it. They did not even listen to their own leadership, which was saying that you need to stop at Sanjani. So how do you deal with somebody who does not obey a contract? How do you deal with somebody who does not obey the law? How do you deal with somebody who does not have any centralized leadership with which you can go and deal with? So that's really what we're dealing with right now. The fact that, we have Barrister Gohar and Salman Akram Raja and Bushra Bibi and Alima Khan and Imran Khan and all of these people giving us different opinions on what things are going to be. It's honestly, at this stage, the clearest, and I say this with a lot of responsibility, but the closest political model to the kind of model that PTI has right now is the model of TTP, because that's exactly what happens in TTP. You cannot go and talk to anyone because there are 10 characters and all of them have these different factions that they are looking at. It's a very decentralized leadership. And so because of that, it makes it very difficult to deal with a party like PTI as well.
Absolutely. And Faisal, I want your take on that, because Barrister Safi, of course, has pointed towards where the situation is with the party and has spoken about the fact that perhaps the right approach for the government would be to take it where it organically goes. But I want to know what you understand by that, and what do you think that means, particularly in terms of actions on ground, particularly in terms of how decentralized the leadership is, as Barrister Safi and Dr. Niaz have mentioned as well, where they currently stand. What then will be the approach for such a party if banning them is not an option or wouldn't help? What will then be the way forward when a party doesn't truly engage and then, of course, repeatedly acts in the ways that we've seen previously as well? So what really is the political step forward with this party, and what needs to be the government's approach in your opinion?
Sana, it's a very good question, and of course the only option I look towards always, even before the march, even before the dharna, I kept on saying that the talks is the only solution, And in these kind of cases, in the best position, if somebody is, and that is the government, because they have every power in their hands, even the power of negotiations they have in their hands. It's just a matter of giving away a few things in terms of making your opponent believe that there is a sincerity in terms of talks. And of course, unless you provide that leverage, the other side, the opponent side, would always consider you a sort of a personal enemy rather than the political enemy. I think it was all about, as we know, that in this current scenario, PTI as a political party considers everyone as their enemy. And this perspective can only be drawn away by little positive gestures. I think there should have been some, and if not, then People's Party leadership, they would have taken the lead in this context, because if the other party is not comfortable in talking with the PMLN, as PMLN is the leading force of the government, then the second party is People's Party. They have leverage within within the PTI as well. But when it comes to the decision making, I said it in the past and I say it again, and I would keep on repeating in the future as well. There is only one grid station, the powerful hub of PTI, and that is the founding Imran Khan, who happens to be, of course, the founder of the party. He is, and his words are directly intact with the people on ground, with the workers on ground. And workers on ground and people on ground, they don't care who's leading them or who's considered to be their leader at this hour, because we have seen even in the election earlier this year, this was the notion. I mean, whoever was coming to contest the election, even if it was their first election or whatever, they were not the ones who were actually contesting the elections. It was people considered only one man to be the contestant, and that was, of course, the very founder we are talking about. And to me, I think it's a one-man party. It's a one-man party, and that is why I say that there needs to be some sort of care that is need of the hour in terms of how to deal with them. And I think when earlier I was listening to Barrister Safi when he said that it is very near to TTP, God forbid, we should never ever consider this kind of political party. Yes, there are anomalies which are seen on ground, created by this political party. Yes, there are big question marks on their conduct, but still they are a political party who become part of our electoral system, and we should believe that eventually they will come to terms with it. Eventually they will listen to the sense, and the only sense is, no matter how disgruntled they are, no matter how angry they are, but they must believe in the system, they must believe in the statehood of Pakistan, and the only way it can be done is, opening up your arms and try to simply invite them to hug you rather than to, have a go on you or you have a go on them. I think there are very simple steps that needs to be taken in coming future. That is to, of course, give bit of leverage that can actually initiate the talks, that can actually initiate a hope. And the hope is that everything should be...
What leverage?
Leverage in terms...
To whom?
There is only one man. There is only one man who's sitting inside, and there are cases against him. And if more leverage to him, in which he can talk to his, lower cadres, and then lower cadres, they can, of course, give him a bit of sense. Like, Barrister Safi already mentioned a name, Barrister Salman Raja. He is an excellent man who can take the lead in terms of, creating a bridge between the government and that single man sitting inside the jail. And that's why it's important to have these kind of people around, because they talk sense. They are the people who are very knowledgeable people, and their voice is being heard. And nobody can contradict that these people are who are actually inciting violence. They are against the violence. And I think these positive steps, with help of these kind of people, and Barrister Gohar as well, he's a sensible man. And I think these kind of people, they can play the role. If we don't involve them to play the role, then obviously we'll come up with the other names as well who have no standing within the party. As Mohtarama Bushra Bibi herself said that she is not part of the party and she hasn't got the political career to pursue, but still she was here, of course, leading this march. And I'm pretty much sure if it was the actual leadership of this massive crowd which was coming towards the Constitution Avenue, as we have the example from the past in which once march was coming towards Islamabad D Chowk, but at the point when it reached next to the Centaurus, they had to dismantle it, and they actually said that we are going back. Right. Reason being, at that time, the ultimate leadership of the party, they had said that we can sense that there are few amongst us who are carrying the weapons, and we don't want to create a scenario in which Pakistanis from the both sides can be seen shooting at each other. So if that kind of sense prevails, nothing would happen to Pakistan, and the kind of revival of economy we are seeing, we achieved this revival of economy by very hard means. And I think when we are achieving this economic revival, we must take the decisions which are saner decisions to stabilize it more, to keep this going. The continuity can only be achieved in the political stability through these kind of positive aspects to be highlighted. And once we achieve the political stability in Pakistan, nobody would ever dare to disrupt the economic stability of Pakistan. And one last thing. Yeah. Earlier, obviously, when I was listening to Barrister Safi, he has said that, that if the government is going to impose the governor rule, I fully agree with him, because in other way we would start listening to another thing. Because I remember when the PDM took the government, they straight away said that the economic situation was in dire conditions. Nothing was going on in the country at that time, and the change was unstoppable at that time. That's why change took place, and in the center they fixed everything when they came. And now once governor rule is being imposed, or if God forbid it gets imposed in there, it not only create a security havoc in the province, but it would also be seen as, the voices like the spokesperson would start saying that, the economy of the province was in shambles, and now they are trying to, of course, pull it along, and they are trying to fix it. And I mean, 2 years it took to fix in the center. God knows how many years would it take in the province to settle it.
And Farooq, of course, this brings us to a lot of material that I'm sure that you will be responding towards, especially in terms of where the party's leadership stands and the government's approach. And I'd love to hear your perspective on that as well. But add to that while we're talking about all of this, the fact is that there are court cases going on. The fact is that the PDA founder is jailed, and the fact is that we've now seen the ATC also releasing non-bailable arrest warrants for the leadership, including Bushra Bibi and CMKP, and then of course the founder PTI. So while all of this is going on simultaneously, and while we talk about the government's approaches and possible dialogue or national reconciliation, how do these different aspects fit with each other without contradicting them, and how can we actually move forward while we have all of this going on?
Right. Thank you very much, Sana, for the question. I think that earlier I kept on hearing, and I totally agree with this person or that participant. So I'm not totally going to agree with everybody, sure. Right? Anybody. Why? Because I'm entitled to my views. Absolutely. I think that earlier barristers have actually mentioned TTP and compared it. God forbid, I will never compare a party that believes in the Constitution of Pakistan with the Fitna Khawarij, who have actually been killing our children repeatedly and constantly. Similarly, Dr. Saab was actually saying that there is a political and economic crisis in the country. With due respect, I don't think that 26 November had any impact on the government at all. it only obstructed our ways, it only created problems for us. So I would call it a social crisis, not or social instability, because in the end, it is our children, it is our spouses, it is our friends that actually refuse to speak to us, and because of that, there is some kind of social polarization. But when it comes to economics, economics finds its own way. It has been finding in this country. And similarly, when it comes to power, all these dharnas, these agitations, in the end hurt either the agitator or then the common man, not the government, because government is comfortably sitting in its own offices, high offices, and they are not impacted at all. Right? Now I have to actually point out that I agree on one thing, and that is the nature of PTI. We keep on calling it Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. It is, in a sense, and I think it will be prudent to call it Pakistan Tehreek-e-Imran, right? It is founded by one person. It is party which is actually revolving around one person, and it is a party which keeps on saying that it has an ideology, but in a sense, the ideology is Imran Khan, right? Whether you like it or not. So the crisis that we are seeing right now is what you see in the shape of culling. When you take out leader of a pack, and then the entire pack actually goes haywire. And add to this another aspect or another twist, and that is that the Imran Khan we are talking about, the person we are talking about is a populist, right? Because of that, the nature of entire party is populist and it is confrontationist. Basically, workers usually in any party are supposed to be hotheads, but here you have a bigger amount of hotheads. So for them to actually obey somebody like barrister Gohar or Salman Karam Taja, people who are polite, who are polished, who are educated, who are not firebrand, it becomes very difficult, because then people sensing that they are somehow, quote unquote, they call them weak leaders. So they start sensing blood, and then they start undermining that, right? But here's the down low for anybody who wants to actually undermine Gohar, barrister Gohar or Salman Karam Raja, that you had a lot of violent outbreaks, and because of those violent outbreaks, you are cornered, your leader is behind bars, and because of that, you need a polished face. And that seems to have worked in the election, because now, in all the parliaments, in all the assemblies, PTI is a force to reckon with. I don't know why people keep on actually opting for other options when you have parliament where you could have actually played very important part. For example, when 26th Amendment was being passed, at that time everybody was being, consulted. Instead of realizing that it is an opportunity and negotiating, what did they do? They went for Maulana. Maulana is in it for Maulana himself, nobody else. And you actually ended up making him larger than life. What happens is that in the end, he gets away with whatever he wants. And the 26th Amendment is passed, and you are high and dry. In Pakistan, there are two things that are enemy of our collective consciousness. One, in cricket, you have 92's World Cup. Because the way we actually won at the start, we were not performing well. Then some miracles happened, and all of a sudden the country actually won the match or the World Cup. Because of that, we think that it is okay to start in the same way in every World Cup, and in the end, results don't come that way. Similarly, the PNA's movement, which actually brought down Bhutto, is also a misnomer, or not a misnomer, basically a thing that was an outlier, and people think that it can be reproduced. It has never worked since then. And because of that, repeatedly in this country, whosoever has gone and tried to bring down the government, remember that lawyers' movement was a huge movement, and despite that, it could not bring down the government. General Musharraf was brought down because Benazir Bhutto was assassinated, and her party was catapulted into power.
Right.
And they, you'll show some patience for me as well, I hope. Right? But they were catapulted to power, and they brought him down. So if you want to negotiate or find a way, the first opportunity was 26th Amendment, where you could have found any way. The second opportunity was to actually bond with other political parties. Remember, PMLN and People's Party were not bosom but others. They were ousted because of each other when they met in exile and they came up with Charter of Democracy. And now the third option and the third possibility is that every time you get out of jail free, you have to actually work with the powers that are be. In order to do that, what you need is usually it settles in something else. For example, you might have to take an exile for a few years from the country, and during that period you don't communicate with media or anything. So this is my humble submission. Whatever you'll do, if you keep on undermining your leadership, I think in one aspect, November 26th was a good culmination point, because all the hotheads who were actively undermining those who were, polite, they have been proven or they have been exposed that this happens in the end. You take people for confrontation and then you scarper. You run away for your life, and then those poor people are exposed to any kind of violence, and then the credibility of power is gone.
Right. Dr. Niaz, I want your perspective on the fact that when the government engages with PTI, particularly on a front where we've seen these protests and rallies, we've seen, of course, a lot of media coverage, we've seen a lot of attention in terms of the rhetoric, in terms of talks, and of course this is something that's still an ongoing discussion. Does that give more limelight than due to a protest or a rally by any political party if it is being looked at in a certain way, or does that really seem to be a threat that big or a problem that big as how it is portrayed on media, for example? I want your take on what really you think is the scenario here. There are, of course, so many other things going on in the country. Why is it that PTI gets to take this limelight?
Well, of course, there's a lot of problems going on in the country right now, in Kurram, in Balochistan, other parts of the tribal areas. But obviously, Islamabad, it's the capital of the country. Media coverage is much higher. There's hardly, that many journalists in Balochistan and the far-flung areas of KP. So obviously, Islamabad has its own importance, and the fact that there's ongoing violence and instability going on in those parts of the country. But when it reaches the center, the capital of the country, then obviously it has its own ramifications, and the global media catches on faster, the national media catches on faster, and the force that is most easily able to come to Islamabad is PTI, the groups that are operating in Balochistan and KP. Their reach doesn't come all the way to Islamabad. So obviously when PTI does something in Islamabad, that catches more attention. But, the fact is we have to identify what is the root cause of today's problems. Is it, many of the problems that several of, the other participants have pointed out about PTI being very divisive, its nature of politics, and so on. I mean, I agree with all of that. And, for 4 years, I was a vehement critic of PTI on all those counts. But the point is, those problems are present today, but they are not the root cause of the problem. The root cause of the problems are related to some of the grievances that PTI is raising, which in this case are valid compared to all its previous, campaigns starting from 2014. Its, campaign about, election rigging was completely wrong. Its second wave was, related to Panama. That was also wrong. Its third wave of campaigning was related to, its removal based on the vote of no confidence, and its claim that it was removed due to a US conspiracy. That was all wrong. But now for the fourth time, it's finally taking carrying a campaign where its basic grievances are valid, those related to the fact that all of its leaders are being put in jail or forced to flee or forced to leave the party. Half of its, leadership has been forced to leave. The other half is in jail on false cases. There's serious questions about, the February elections, their fairness, the fact that, the election tribunals have not been allowed to function, and then, the way the 26th Amendment. The big issue about 26th Amendment is not the role of PTI and, the fact that it left everything to Maulana. The big thing about is, the way it was crafted. It was such a dubious piece of legislation, and then the way it was pushed. So if you put all these issues together, there's huge amount of, genuine issues that need to be resolved, and that's where, talks come in.
Right, absolutely. Barrister Safi, I want your take very quickly also on the possibilities for the PTI in terms of a political party or where it stands, what really should be their step forward in terms of whatever grievances that they have, and with regards to the involvement of Bushra Bibi or the sisters of the founder of PTI. Is that something that is also undermining the PTI's own stance when it comes to these issues?
100%, of course, Anna. I think from the get-go, one of the biggest problems with PTI is that PTI wants democracy within Pakistan, but they don't want democracy within their own party. They don't want to have elections. That is why the Election Commission disqualified them. And they don't, right now, non-office holders like Alima Khan, like Bushra Bibi are leading the whole party. It looks like it is a monarchy. It does not look like it is a political party at all. But I want to say something, and that this is something that seems to have riled up everybody within the room of me comparing PTI to TTP. I did not compare PTI to TTP ideologically. I did not suggest that they hold the same perspectives on how the country is to be governed. I only said that their organizational structure is similar because they have a decentralized organizational structure. And right now, the only other political entity that I can think of that has a decentralized political structure is TTP, because you cannot negotiate with TTP. You cannot negotiate with them because they do not have any fixed leadership. Just like PTI does not seem to have any fixed leadership that you can go and talk to. There are several people who seem to continue to do what they want themselves. But that said, this is my perspective, but I also will take this moment now to introduce what TTP's perspective is. And TTP itself has put out letters in support of PTI saying that PTI is fully aligned with their vision. So this is not me saying anything. TTP itself has said something, and that I think should be
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Barrister Safi. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and thank you very much, Dr. Niaz Murtaza, for joining us and being a part of this discussion today. We're going to quickly move on to our next segment that takes a look at the genocide that is going on in Gaza. And of course, this is something extremely important in terms of what is going on internationally, and I hope that we can all speak on it because this is a very important aspect. And of course, with reference to whether or not a ceasefire is possible is another question mark that has been there for a while. Faisal, I want your take first in terms of Egypt hosting this and, of course, possibilities arising once again. Are we moving forward?
Yes, Sana, this is the big question mark whether we are moving forward or not. In the case of Hezbollah, what we saw was Hezbollah, as it hails from Lebanon, and Lebanon is host of many of the French investments, and suddenly we saw that it was positive indications from there, coming from there. But when it comes to Gaza, whether it is going to be possible or not, only future will tell. I just want to mention here that politically, Hamas always was considered as an offshoot of Ahwanul Muslimin, that was Muslim Brotherhood, and it has always been the anti-government or anti-current government of Egypt. How it is going to play in in this scenario, it is something we should be looking at. If it goes positive, I'm so happy because end of the day, we are saving the lives. But so far, of course, when it comes to Israel, Israel maintains that the northern part of Gaza, they are not going to give it back to Hamas or give it back to people of Gaza.
Right.
They want to, of course, keep a focus of power up there, and they want to further squeeze Gazans in whatever the land they have.
Right. We also have Barrister Safi who wants to say something on this, so let's also take his perspective. Yes, Barrister Safi.
The matter remains that Egypt, even though it is now trying to play a role as a broker or a mediator between Israel and Hamas, it cannot do so because the treaties that Israel has with Egypt themselves have been violated. The 1979 peace treaties that gave the Rafah corridor to Egypt has been violated vehemently by Israel. Egypt has continued to protest that, but Israel is not listening. It is continuously running over everything that Egypt is saying. And on top of that, the latest idea of developing the Philadelphia corridor is an absolute downright violation of what Egypt has signed up for in 1978 when Anwar Sadat entered into the Camp David Accords. So if the Philadelphia corridor, which is Israel's #1 demand, is made, then that would completely decimate Egyptian borders on its side. And I would honestly hope that Egypt does not get into the mediator role and gives away its own right in trying to resolve the matter, because that right is something that was earned through a lot of difficult negotiations back in 1978. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much, Barrister Safi, for joining us and sharing your views. And Farooq, will come to you now with reference to, of course, where we stand today. The U.S. spokesperson has also spoken about how we might be moving towards a truce, but again said that we're not there yet. Are there any real efforts going on from the U.S. side?
Right, Sana, thank you very much once again. I think that regarding U.S. efforts and UN efforts, all of them amount to nothing. Earlier, you were showing images of what is going on in Gaza. Just look at those pictures. This is a slap in the face of the world's conscience. I mean, this kind of bulldozing of human life, total ethnic cleansing. Moshe Yaalon, former defense minister of Netanyahu's party, right? He actually spoke out that this is ethnic cleansing. Cities are gone. So with that kind of state of affairs, when it comes to UN, every time everybody would say that it doesn't actually perform a political role and it fails. I used to say at least in social aspects, in poverty alleviation, in food supply, they are doing something. But they have miserably failed here. Their food and medicines have actually expired waiting for people who are suffering there, and that was not allowed. When you have such a brutal force like, this Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu, with that, any kind of talks are meaningless. You can have some kind of lull, but with due respect, what happened in Lebanon? Back in 60s, back in 80s, when Lebanon was first invaded by Israel, the entire world actually started questioning it. Now the world doesn't do that. So this is the state of affairs right now, that even the own people are saying it is ethnic cleansing, and the world still does not want to see. America's system has defeated, the President Biden, who was trying to restrain Netanyahu. But now that control is gone also. We'll see what happens next.
Right. Thank you, Farooq, and thank you, Faisal, for joining us as always in the debate. That's all that we have time for. We'll now see you tomorrow.